Look, right? Okay. We're here. I thought, may as well record this live. Why not? I rarely do live videos, but I did one earlier. And I just decided that if I'm going to be recording this video tonight, I may as well just record it and see who wants to drop in and talk to me while I do it. So, Uprising pre-releases start this weekend. Most people I know do not take pre-releases super seriously. But if you are one of those sweaty individuals who decides you need to win that pre-release for no prizes, I mean, the stores I know aren't doing any specific prizes, they're doing participation, then this is the sort of thing that is going to help you. So, let's just flick over here. What we're going to be doing in this quick episode is we're going to be running through a rough limited guide of the cards that you should be caring about in Uprising. No, we don't want decks, we want to browse. In Uprising Sealed and Draft. Obviously, this is a very early guide. I have to date done 2 Uprising drafts and obviously played in 1 Sealed event. But, you know, we have a good understanding, at least, of what the good cards are, and we can kind of give them a quick score. Also, to give you a bit of a preview, so for my Patreons, I talk about my Patreon every now and then. I don't want to bombard you guys with it, but it does exist. But for my Patreons, I have actually written this up in a guide form in terms of the cards I think that are really good, what I think the pitch ratios should be for each of the classes, and we're going to talk through a little bit of that. But obviously, if you want an in-depth written guide, then that is the sort of thing you will get on my Patreon. I've also started writing up tournament guides after each of the events I go to, really just to give people a feel and an experience of an event. If you weren't there yourself, what did it feel like? What did I feel like the good matchups were? Where do I feel the friction came in? Where do I feel like I made those losses? You know, and I think it's good to get other people's opinions on sort of a competitive environment, especially if you weren't there yourself, or if you're wondering sort of how it feels and where you get into the mind space. Because my record in Madrid, I mean, I went reasonably badly in the Sealed. My pools weren't great. I went 1 draw, 4 wins in the team Sealed, and the team Blitz and lost. My team lost all but one of those rounds, so we didn't necessarily do so well as a team, but I was on fire, and then I won the Blitz Showdown event and walked away with 3,000 prize tickets and $500, so I was feeling pretty good. But part of that was just based around the fact that I actually got to draft Uprising because we had a spare box kicking around from the Friday prizes, and then of course we had the massive draft, and it's a really fun draft experience, right? So let's just start with Dromai, right? And as is usual in limited set reviews, we tend to just skip over a lot of Majestics, right? This is kind of important because if you get them, it's worth knowing whether or not they're good, right? If you get one of these big dragons, they are good. You should play it, right? That's a bomb card. If you get any of these and you get enough resources to play them, put them in your deck. Play, if you've got support for them, play Dromai. Blood of the Drakai, maybe, not really. Like, it's hard to optimize this in Sealed, but you might just play it to have the bling. Silken Form, obviously, is a really good card. Draft it if you see it and you're going Dromai. I wouldn't say it's like as good as like a Breaking Scales or a Snapdragon Scalers or something like that. Like, it's a nice effect to have, but it's not as important to draft as the Arcane Barrier Boots. So I would draft the Arcane Barrier Boots first, and then if you see these, maybe draft these as well. But definitely the Arcane Barrier Boots are much worth drafting. A quick rough order for dragons, if you have to choose them. I haven't put a super amount of thought into this, but ultimately you have the good dragons and you have the less good dragons, right? Chromai is brilliant, gets you your action point back if they break it. Kyloria is amazing, draws you cards. Necria, okay, gets you Ash, that's okay. Uvia is really good, just gets you free transformations. Themai, if you see it, take it straight away. It basically kills Icelander, and you're already very, very favored into the Icelander matchup, but just having this on the table gains you 4 life, and that's assuming that they can draw a card that can kill it in one go. If they didn't draft any 4 attack cards, of which there aren't actually that many, 4 arcane cards in the set, this may actually stay on the board for more than a while, because remember, their weapon can't actually target dragons, so they have to have a single 4 attack that's going to kill it. Remember, a lot of the things don't have instants. So 4 is actually a really big break point for Dromai's damage, right? This is actually quite good. It's basically Phantasmaclasm. Yes, they'll kill it very easily, but you also get to attack for 9, as long as 3 arcane damage. This will close out games. This is not as good as it appears. Take it, it's fine. You should always take these dragons anyway. I don't think there's any of them you don't want in draft. But this, remember that its ability says if it would deal damage, remove an insurance counter, prevent 3 of that damage. If they hit it for 6, it still dies, even if you block 3 of it. And if they hit it for 1, it has to lose the counter. So it's not great, but it's still a 1 for 3 dragon they have to deal with. So don't be afraid about taking that either. So in draft, if you get any of these, just, you want to play Dromai, just start taking them. But obviously things like Chromai, Kyloria, Uvia, Miragei, Themai are the better ones, not including the Majestics. Burn them all, so-so. Like, it's not bad in a limited environment. 1 arcane damage is very, very impactful, so it is good to take. But, like, you're going to have to attack with these dragons. You're going to have a lot of cards that make dragons. Like, whereas one of these is a bomb that might push you into Icelander if the rest of your cards aren't as good. This isn't worth playing unless you have a lot of cards that make the little dragons, right? Which brings us down, hopefully nicely, into the common section. What are the best cards in Dromai in common? Billowing Mirage in red. Billowing Mirage in yellow is kind of also okay. The blue pays for stuff, that's fine. This, good enough in red. I wouldn't really worry about it in other colours. It does block 3, which is quite nice. I'm not such a fan of Dust Up, but obviously in red it's good. And remember, so when we're talking about Dromai, there are a few very, very simple rules that we need to follow. The most important thing that you can do is A, have enough red so you can pitch things for Ash generation, and B, have enough cards that make Ether Ash Wings, right? You might only get 2 or 3 of the rare dragons, 1 of the Majestics, so they're not really the core of your deck, though they do have a really big impact on the deck, and if you were drafting, you definitely want them. But really what you actually need as a core is the red Billowing Mirages, the Rake the Embers, the Skittering Sands, right? The things that turn Ash into dragons, right? And if you get these reds, if you get these, then you're sort of sitting in a really good situation because you have all of these dragons that you can use to basically fuel your engine, right? So that's essentially what you need. You need a lot of these in reds and you need a few blues to start paying for stuff. But I will go as far as to say that you will take Skittering Sands in any colour. You'll take Rake the Embers in any colour. You'll take Sweeping Blow in any colour because it's a 1-cost attack, which lets you pitch a red to get an Ash. It gets you an Ash, which is actually kind of hard to generate. You're going to take Dust Up in red. You're going to take Billowing Mirage in any colour, but the red is really good. Dunebreaker Centipede in red. And that's kind of the core of where you're going with the Dromai cards. Remember, you need a certain amount of reds. I think in my limited guide I've written 18, but obviously that's like perfect numbers is 18 reds, but it's not like the only it's not the only indicator. If you have good yellows, then it can be kind of worth it as well. And then you need about 10 to 12 blues just to pay for stuff. The dragons aren't necessarily cheap. It is still good to pitch a blue to pay for something like an Embermore Centipede. Still good to pitch a blue to pay for multiple attacks, to pay for some of the generics and stuff like that. You don't just want to have loads of reds, even though she is very red focused. Because remember that pitching the blue lets you block more efficiently, and then gives you more of a turn that you can do with your dragon. Because remember, something like pitching a blue to play out evoke one of these big dragons, like a Viscerai dragon, basically, and then attacking with it for 9 is still a good turn. You don't have to play a red and then go. And remember as well, the important thing about Dromai is that the playing of the red card gives her dragons go again. The creation of an Ash is an added bonus that you need to make the dragons. So if you have a board full of dragons, the game doesn't care if you're pitching a blue or a red to pay for a big dragon or a big attack. It just cares that you've played the red card. So it's actually really nice to have enough blues in your decks to be able to pay for those expensive turns, to have enough blues to pitch for Arcane Barrier as well, and generally to have these options that are going to give you flexible choices. So 8 to 12 blues, the rest reds, and yellows of the good cards like Skittering Sand, Sandcover yellow is fine, Rake the Embers yellow is fine too. Sandcover, actually very good in red, all right in yellow. And that's kind of Dromai. Did that kind of quickly, but that's all right. So we're going to move on now quickly to Fi. Obviously, we've got Fire's ability. You may start the game with the Phoenix Flame in your graveyard. 3, return a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard to your hand. This ability costs 1 less for each Draconic Chain Link you control. You have your weapon, which is 2 attack. If you play 2 or more Draconic Chain Links, gets go again. Heat Wave is actually amazing. Don't underestimate Heat Wave, especially in draft. The Quell is alright, but mostly it's if you get 2 Phoenix Flames on one turn, it's plus 2 damage, which is pretty above rate for an equipment in a limited environment. Again, kind of blazing through the Majestics. If you get them, great. Phoenix Form is really good. Spreading Flames is amazing. Combustion Point, they're all actually really good if you get them in draft. But, you know, we're not going to be able to rely on them. Of the rares, Engulfing Flameweave, Mounting Anger, they're both really good. Just take them if you get them. Rise from the Ashes is probably my favorite card in the set. Not just because of the art, but just because of the turns it enables. It gets you a Phoenix, it gives it +3, but it gives the next attack you play +3, so it doesn't have to be the Phoenix Flame. But if you don't have a combo starter, you fetch the Phoenix Flame, it comes in for 3 instead of 0, and then your combo starts. Brand with Cinderclaw, again, is a 0 for 3, it's really good. Cinderskin Devotion is alright. Duskrunner Outlaw is really good. Lava Vein Loyalty, alright. Rebellious Rush is decent as well. The main thing I want to get across to people with Fi, especially in a limited environment, is kind of like Dromai. You want like 16 to 18 reds. You still want like 12 blues, because remember, there's still a lot of arcane damage in the set. You have cards that cost 2. Your weapon costs 2. You still need to pay for those things. So, you know, you're going to need this kind of sort of environment, right? Where you have enough blues to pay for things, and that's kind of going to get you your situation where you can afford things. But the main thing you need in Fi to actually drive your engine, if you will, is just stuff that says go again, right? Ignore everything else, right? If you had a choice, like say you got 6 Cinderskin Devotion and 6 Lava Vein Loyalty in your sealed pool, you should not play Fi with that. I don't care if they're reds, you know, and you say you don't have enough blues, right? I don't care. You just should not play that, right? Because we're talking about a situation where these are actually conditional go again. This isn't conditional go again. Now, I will say, to caveat that last point, though, if you do get enough blues that you can pitch to get a Phoenix Flame at the start of the turn, so 1 blue, pitch, get a Phoenix Flame, then it works out. That's a lot of people don't use Fi's ability that way because it's below rate, because they don't want to pay for it. But actually, the ability to pitch a blue to start this, if you've got 2 or more Draconic Chain Links series, is actually very, very strong. So you're kind of in a situation where actually, if you get enough blues, you can fix any problem you have with Fi, you know, not having enough go again, just by getting a Phoenix Flame to start your turn. But ideally, what indicates you should play Fi in a pre-release is the presence of these red and yellow go again cards that just have go again built in, right? If I get like 10 cards that just say go again, maybe I get another 2 or 3 cards that are conditional, then I think Fi is a really strong choice, because you're basically going to sit there with 5 cards and just say, this is how much damage I can deal to you every turn, and just see what happens, right? Same with Ronin Renegade, same with Soaring Strike. You're just happy to get any of those. Sash of Sandakai, if you see it, draft it straight away. If it's in your sealed pool, you should play it. Obviously, legendaries are really good if you get them. This card is amazing. It just gets you a free resource if you played a red card. Thor is really good. If you open that, definitely use it. Liquefy, not so good. Uprising, these are all setup cards, right? You know, they're tricky to get off. And also, like, you don't necessarily deal damage with them. The specializations are actually quite good. Red Hot, Rise Up, they do both work in Fi and Dromai. I will say that, obviously, they work better in the one that matches their art. Rise Up is an amazing sealed card, so if you open this, it's a good, like, Dromai indicator. The other good Dromai indicators it's Fi indicator. The other good Fi indicators in draft, specifically, Flamecall Awakening and Inflame are the 2 main ones, right? Because these basically just give you extra Phoenix Flame tokens, and if you ever draft, like, Rise Up, Flamecall Awakening, and Inflame, and you can set up that 3 Phoenix Flame turn, you're actually going to get, like, 9 damage off this, which is genuinely disgusting. 9 damage dominate. I will say, like, the Draconic cards are good, but don't be baited into drafting too many of them. the Rupture things are great, but you don't actually want more than, like, I would say 4 or 5 in your deck. Because if you draw a hand full of them, you're in a situation where you can't actually turn them on, and then they're just below rate attack. So I would really like, in my draft deck, maybe to have, like, 1 Lava Burst, maybe 2 Lava Bursts, or a Searing Touch, maybe a Rise Up, just to finish things off. But I wouldn't like 6 or 7 of them, right? And if I get a limited pool that's heavy on Draconic, but this is the Draconic, right? It's all Lava Bursts and Searing Touches instead of the Go Again, then I'm probably not going to play Draconic, because that's not actually a good set for me, right? The only counteract to that is obviously, you know, if you have a lot of Dragon Generation and Dromai, then something like Lava Burst becomes more stable if you have a lot of Go Again and Fi. And that's kind of like how you need to build Draconic. It's actually not really about the finishers, it's about the setup for the finisher. So in Dromai, it's how many dragons can I make in the course of the game. I think in the draft deck, I'll show it to you here on my Patreon, that I drafted with Dromai, I actually have 21 different ways, no, not different ways to make dragons. I have the ability to make, I think, at least 18 dragons on my cards. And that meant that I was really confident that I would get a board every game. And the one game that my opponent actually destroyed a lot of my dragons, I just turned around and played a red Rake the Embers, made 3 more, and then I still had 4 dragons and Lava Burst was turned on. So there are a lot of different, very interesting ways that these Draconic cards combo together. And you can use that to generate a very sort of interesting dynamic where you're actually getting a lot of engagement, a lot of choices, I guess. But there are those key indicators. Go Again in Fi, Dragon Generation and Ash Generation in Dromai that kind of push you towards one of the Draconic heroes over the other one. And those are kind of the important things to remember. You will probably end up playing Phoenix Flames in both, just because Dromai doesn't always necessarily get all the red cards she needs in the pool. And you do need red cards to make Ash. So it isn't that unlikely that you're going to get the Phoenix Flames in your Dromai deck just to give you some more reds. And also remember that if you do have a lot of Dragon Generation, it is still a 0 cost red that can give them all Go Again. So you block with the rest of your hand and then play the Phoenix Flame and attack with 2, 3, 4 dragons. You're still in a really good situation. So on to Icelander. Icelander is the weirdest one, I think, to play in Sealed and to figure out like what your Sealed pool is. So if we think about, you know, it's not your turn. You may play non-attack action cards from your arsenal as though they were an instant, if they're blue. Whenever you play an ice card during an opponent's turn, create a Frostbite token under their control. Now, I didn't take a photo of my limited Icelander pool. I wish I had, but you'll kind of get the quick impression that the most important cards in Icelander are just the blue non-attack actions that are ice, right? And we'll talk about them in a second. Just break the about breakpoints and cost breakpoints and things like that in a second. But obviously, we have the 2 Majestics. Encase is very good because it's basically a time skip. Deal 3 arcane damage to any target. If Encase was fused and deals damage to a hero, freeze that hero and all equipment they control until the start of your next turn. Freezing points are 3 for 5 with arcane damage. If you fuse it, it deals 5 plus the number of frostbites they control. You know, you're not necessarily going to be making them that many frostbites. There may be combos you can get with them, but don't rely on it. But Encase, I think, is very good. I mean, 5 arcane damage is very good. Sigil of Permafrost is actually quite good, because when you fuse it, and then you hit them with Waning Moon, they'll get frostbites equal to the amount of damage that Waning Moon hits for. So it's actually a really, really strong card. You know, just for shutting down your opponent's turn. It is a defense reaction, so you never really want to Arsenal it, because you can play it from Arsenal, but you just want to have something else in Arsenal. And by itself, it doesn't turn on the Waning Moon weapon, because it's not an action card. So you do need something else in Arsenal that you can play to turn on Waning Moon. But that is a very nice sort of 2-3 card combo that will give them like 3 Frostbite tokens and really slow down their turn. So these are really good to like draft or just to play with if you get them in Sealed. Ice Eternal is really strong. If it's fused, it makes that many Frostbites, and then it gives them damage equal to the number of frostbites they control. You can just imagine playing that at the start of someone's turn. So they attack you for 2 or 3, you take 3 damage, then you play this and give them 6 frostbites and 6 arcane. If you pitch enough blues, really strong card. So if you get like these, it's a really good indicator to play Icelander, but it's not the main indicator. The main indicator to play Icelander is in these cards. So Icebind is all right, but actually things like Ether Hail, Frosting, in blue are really, really important. And they're really important for a very simple reason. Arctic Incarceration, Cold Snap are all really important. And I say those are the main ones. Arctic Incarceration, Cold Snap, and the 2 Ice Wizard blue attacks. And they're really important for a very simple reason. When you play this ice attack from Arsenal, you will give your opponent a Frostbite. So regardless of what you do in terms of damage, or if you even have a follow-up, these instantly disrupt your opponent's turn. And if you're playing against a Fi, 1 Frostbite can make the difference between a good turn and a bad turn, right? And even if you're playing against Dromai, the same can be true. Also, Ether Hail and Frosting are very important because they have their cost ratios, right? You can't pitch a blue and Ice Bolt your opponent and also trigger Waning Moon. So this is actually only 3 damage unless you pitch for more or you have the instant Wizard Cloak. But this is actually 5 damage because you pitch a blue for it, you play it, and then you trigger the weapon and give them a Frostbite. Same is said for this, except you don't have to pitch for it, but if you do, it's very easy to turn on the weapon. So that's just something to keep in mind, that ratio on the blues of 1s and 0s, and even, to be honest, on the reds of 1s and 0s, because on your turn you can still play this for 4 Arcane and trigger the weapon, which is quite a big deal. So in Icelander, really, you are looking for reds and blues, and you are looking for red and blue non-attack actions that basically let you trigger your weapon as well to add on a 2 or a 3 damage and basically round up the amount of arcane damage you're dealing. It's not to say things like Ether Ice Vein aren't good. I mean, it's 5 arcane. If it's fused, they discard a card unless they pay 2. It's a really great control effect, but it doesn't disrupt their turn necessarily as much as playing an Ice Wizard card or an Ice card on their turn in the middle of their pitching. If they pitch a red and you instantly go, here's a Frostbite, they have to pitch again for their next action. It creates a lot of friction. I'm not a fan of Brain Freeze in Limited, but I can see why you might want it. But, you know, I'm not really a fan of it. Polar Cap is fine as well. It gives them a Frostbite. It's fine in blue, but it doesn't really round up for that much. Also, 2 arcane damage can be blocked. We won't talk about Coronet Peak. The gloves are pretty good. I would take the gloves. Glacial Horns is actually really good because if we go back to Succumb to Winter, Glacial Horns, you action destroy it to freeze an arsenal and an ally. And Succumb to Winter says if it was fused and targets a hero, destroy a frozen card in their arsenal, and if it was fused, destroy a frozen ally. So if you have Glacial Horns as a common and Succumb to Winter as a red, you can actually freeze a card in their arsenal and an ally and then blow them both up. It's really, really strong. So that's a good combo if you get into Icelander. Eisenhower Weathervane is really good. You know, obviously it's great in blue, but it's great in red as well. It's kind of like, if you have a lot of Ice Fuse and you have this, then it's really good. Otherwise, it's a bit of a trap because you're just going to play it and you're never actually going to freeze. Arctic Incarceration is good in every color. It doesn't matter if you're playing it on your opponent's turn and giving them 2 Frostbites because it makes 1, and then obviously it's an ice card, so it will make 2. Or you're just playing it on your turn and saying have 3 Frostbites for your next turn. Like, that's still really huge. So don't underrate that. Cold Snap is like whatever. It's really good in blue. I don't really rate it in the other colors. But I mean, you play it from Arsenal, you draw a card, so it kind of replaces itself, and it costs 1, so you can ping for the weapon after you play it on your turn. But I think as a blue, it's really good because it's Frostbite, Arsenal Freeze, card draw, and obviously if you pitch a blue, you get the weapon. I think I've said for Icelander that you really want to focus on 0 cost 2 damage Ice Wizard blues, the 0 cost 1 damage Ice Wizard blue, the 1 cost 2 damage Ice Wizard blue, and basically any of the blues. You basically want, I think, about 20 blues for that deck and 10 reds if you're drafting. But, you know, I wouldn't say that. Is 2 Phoenix Flames enough for 5? Thanks for the question. I think I would just always play 3, but it kind of depends how many cards you have to, like, search them, get them out, and stuff like that. I don't think there's much downside, though, to playing the extra Phoenix Flames. 1 starts in your graveyard. Remember, you can play 3 in Limited. And you're always going to want to have more, and you're always going to want to fetch them. They are free damage. But I think maybe if I didn't get like a lot of Rise Ups and Flame Call Retributions and stuff like that, I might cut down to 2, just because I don't necessarily want a card in my hand that only comes in for 0. But I think if you've got any amount of search and ways to recur them, you do kind of want to have 3 in the deck because you want to draw the second one as quickly as possible, if that makes sense. Because if you're playing things like Rise Up, you want to make sure you draw that second Phoenix Flame as quickly as possible so that you can attack with the first one and then resurrect the second one when you have enough chain links. So you're running 3 not necessarily to play all 3 in one game. You're running 3 because the games go quite quickly and you want to make sure you draw the second, right? So I think I would probably just run 3 Phoenix Flames in Fi all the time. But I can understand if you have no search, no Phoenix Flame interaction, it probably doesn't matter. But I think the second you start adding in Rise Up, some Flame Call Awakenings and stuff like that, you may as well play 3 just to get them there. On to Illusionist Generics. Obviously, the gloves are all right, I think. I don't think I've never seen them played in Limited. I think they'll probably be fine. The one thing you will notice is that we haven't seen a single card in Icelander or Fi that can pop illusions. There is a real serious lack of poppers in this set. But they do exist, so do be aware of them. Obviously, we have Frightmare. Personally, I think this is a bad card in Limited, just because of how sort of limited they are in terms of, like, there aren't that many poppers, so this doesn't trigger up that much. And I think it will just block up your arsenal, so I don't really like it. Same for Semblance. It feels like a constructed card. Transmogrify is amazing, because what you do with Dromai is you actually just transmogrify a Phoenix Flame, and then your Phoenix Flame just comes in for 8, or you transmogrify one of your 3 attacks with Go Again, and then they come in for 8, and you're just feeling really smug. Yeah, so I will say it does feel really bad to draw Phoenix Flames, but in that situation, you can just kind of get away with pitching them if you don't want to play them, or they are just another chain link that just gets you an extra 1 damage. Like, it's not perfect, but they do add up over the course of the game, and they do add quite a lot to your tempo if you have 2 of them, and you have some of the Phoenix Flame synergy, especially Rise Up. It can add quite a lot of power. So I wouldn't discount Phoenix Flame. I understand it does feel bad to draw them, especially if you can't, it's just a 0 for 1, right? So it's not great. But once you do have a synergy, drawing them can usually be worth it after a while. Ninja Gloves are amazing. If you get them, play them. Tide Flippers are really good. Don't underestimate this card. Arcane Barrier is so important in this set. If you see them, draft them. I would even consider them as an early pick if you're not playing Fi, just to draft them and make sure you've got the Arcane Barrier if you decide to start playing Fi, even if you're not certain. Double Strike is meh. I don't think it's particularly good in Limited. Take the Tempo is amazing in Limited. It's a great finisher. It's even better, to be honest, it's a better finisher than most of the Rupture cards. So if you see Take the Tempo and you're playing Fi, just take it. If you have to Take the Tempo in a decent Fi pool, that's kind of actually decent. Rapid Reflexes is quite good. It's like not as good as Razor Reflexes, but that's okay because it's actually very good in the Limited format. But obviously you want to make sure you meet the criteria. You have a lot of 0-cost cards before you play it. But of course you can buff a Phoenix Flame, which is not, a bad thing. I don't know about the blues or the yellows. It does block for 3, so like I wouldn't feel bad about putting these in as a resource card, and as a last-ditch effort surprise card. But obviously the red is good, the yellow is okay, the blue is not very good, but they do block for 3. The Waning Moon Weapon is very good. Alluvian Constellas, it's a mirror card. If you get it, congratulations, you've just won the pool. You've just got a legendary. Spellfire Cloak's amazing. Definitely draft it if you see it. Not only Arcane Barrier for the mirror, but also the ability to get 1 resource is really good. Tome of Publicity, Rewind, not draft cards. I wouldn't really focus on them too much. Dampen is really strong in the mirror. The only thing I will say is that Dampen is a really funny card, right? Because you can only really, it's not worth it to resolve it as the attacking player. So if you're playing the mirror, the only time you want to play Dampen is after they have attacked you with Arcane, so that you can resolve it as an instant before they resolve theirs. So on your turn, if you play Dampen in a mirror, your opponent is just going to resolve their Arcane effects before you actually hit with Dampen, and the Dampen effect becomes live. So actually, the only Dampen that's really good in the mirror in draft is Dampen Blue, because Dampen Blue lets you go, oh, you've attacked me with Arcane on my turn, I'm on your turn, sorry, I'm going to resolve this as an instant, prevent 2 of that damage. The red is actually kind of redundant as a rare, unless you're up against one of the really big rare dragons. So I could see having this on your sideboard, and if they bring out Vinscari or something, you could play the blue. But the red is just like, I'm not going to be able to play this as an instant if they're attacking me. And if I'm in the Icelander mirror, there's no way I can resolve Dampen without them just resolving their arcane damage first. So it's not actually very good. Ether Dart is alright. Like, you want the ice cards before you play this. But if you have to play this, that's okay. I would play the red just to turn on my weapon. I would play the blue just to turn on my weapon as well, but I don't really rate it. I think you're never going to pick this over one of the blue ice cards. But if you need more blues, it's a good choice. Read the Ripples is actually really good. Don't underestimate this card. Remember that the way it works is, at the beginning of your end phase, destroy Read the Ripples, then opt 1, 2, or 3 based on the color, and draw a card. That happens before you Arsenal. So you're going to play Read the Ripples, and then you basically draw a card that then becomes your Arsenal card. And Read the Ripples also turns on your weapon. So it's perfectly fine turn on Icelander. If you've done a load of stuff on their turn, right, with your instance, you're down to 1 card. If that card is a red Read the Ripples, you just play it. And then maybe you have a blue to do your weapon. Maybe you don't. Even if you don't, you opt 3, take the best blue ice card, put it in your arsenal, and then your control is set up for the next turn. It's actually really, really good. And remember as well that it triggers at the beginning of your end phase. So I have played Read the Ripples blue on my opponent's turn, shot them for 3 damage, and then on my turn I've played another red card, shot them for another 2 damage, and then at the end of that turn, I've opted 1, drawn a card, and arsenaled it. And it basically feels like I've had really, really good efficiency, so don't underrate that. Also, don't underrate this next card. If you are playing Dromai in draft, you need to draft this card, right? Especially in red, but even in blue, it doesn't really matter. You need to draft Singe. You 100% need to draft Singe. If you see Singe in your Icelander pool, then it's a good indicator that Icelander might be a safe choice for you. The simple reason for this, if we go back to page 2, it should be on page 2 or page 1. Here we are. The lovely Ether Ashwing, they all have Arcane Barrier. So remember I said you should be going Dromai based on whether or not you have Ashwing Generation, and you should draft blues because they all have Arcane Barrier. If you have 4 or 5 little dragons and you have enough blues in your hand, you are not losing to Icelander, right? Unless they draft Singe. The only time I almost lost to Icelander at the Premier weekend was when they red Singed 4 of my dragons, but I got lucky and I top decked a Rake the Embers red and made the dragons back. And that was when I secured my win, because they said I only got 1 Singe. And I was like, okay, that means that I'm going to win, because they can't kill the rest of my dragons fast enough. And we got to a point where he was going, I'll play something like Ether Dart, kill one of your little dragons, and then I'll Waning Moon you for 3, because Waning Moon doesn't hit. Remember, we'll just double check this so I know I'm right. Waning Moon doesn't hit a target. It only goes for heroes. So you don't actually have a choice to Waning Moon the dragons. So he was basically going 1 attack dragons, 1 attack face, just to try and keep them in check. And you know what? He couldn't keep them in check. I made more. I had more Arcane Barrier, and then he just couldn't hit me. So I was playing 1 red a turn to make another dragon, maybe pitching a red to get some ash, and then pitching 2 blues to prevent Arcane Barrier, 1 on his turn, 1 on my turn. And, you know, you can't get damage through. So Singe is incredibly important if you want to win in a limited environment, because it lets you control Dromai. And people will draft Dromai. She is quite strong in a limited environment. Crown of Providence is good enough. Helios Meter you will probably end up playing because it's the community headpiece. This is actually a low-key, very, very strong card. A lot of people use it early on, like, turn 1, right? I will say, if you are playing Dromai, and even if they don't attack you, right? Because here's an interesting little interaction. If you are attacked as Dromai on turn 1, then you can pitch to Quell your reds to get loads of free ash. You can play Oasis Respite to get free ash. You can do a lot of things to get free ash, right? It's not a bad idea to activate some Quell on turn 1 to get some free ash as Dromai. But if they attack you, this is reusable. So maybe you just trigger this a couple of times with the reds in your hand. Maybe you've got 2 reds and a blue in your hand. You trigger this twice. 3 reds and a blue. Trigger this 3 times. Get 3 ash. But the brilliant thing about this is it doesn't matter. Unlike Quell. So Quell only works if they actually hit you with damage. If they don't hit you with damage, you can still trigger Helios's meter. And I think it's a perfectly valid strategy. If you've got a hand of 4 reds and they don't attack you turn 1, just pitch all those reds straight to your crown of your Helios meter. Prevent 2 damage if they do try and deal something to you. I mean, obviously against fire you want to be really careful because you don't want to pitch 2 reds and then he's going to come in with 4 attacks. Maybe you pitch 2. But the fact is that, like, you have free ash generation if you're not going first. And that's really strong. These are also really good. Don't underestimate them. There will be turns when you need to quell a lot of arcane damage or just a lot of damage. Remember that quell is reusable on separate sources on the same turn. It gets destroyed at the end of a turn, but you can prevent 1 damage from each source as long as you have the resource to pay for the new replacement effect. Erase Face is really good. Vipox is, I don't know what it is. It's something. That's all you've got is really good. Fog Down is not great. Like, it has niche situations, but it costs 3. I wouldn't personally play this in a draft. Flex is really good as a blue. As a red, it's one of the very few poppers in the set. I definitely would consider drafting it as a 2 for 6, but also as a 2 for 6 popper that I can play on the defense. I don't know if it's so good in blue and yellow, but certainly in red it's quite good. Fiendo's Fighting Spirit, amazing in every color. I know what you're thinking, not amazing because it's only a 2 block and you have to be on less life to gain less life to gain 1 back. But what I will say is there's lots of 2 attack cards in this set. There's lots of dragons coming in for 1, etc., etc. If you are behind on like a couple life, nothing feels better than blocking a 2 attack with this card, gaining a life that then blocks the 1 that they come in for next, and you just really feel on top of the world. But more importantly, it's a popper, and the poppers are really, really rare in this set. So if you get poppers, if you get yellow or red, just take it. It will help you massively versus Dromai. Just don't pass up these cards. Include them in your sealed decks, include them in your draft decks, etc. Even the blue is great as a resource that can gain you a life if you block with it. Sift, actually quite good. It's not good card advantage, but it is good at giving you an on turn. And remember, of course, the most important thing, it does turn on Icelander's weapon, so don't be afraid to play Sift blue and Sift red. Same for strategic planning. It turns on Icelander's weapon. It has go again, and it gives you the resources to swing in with the weapon for 2 or 3. Brothers in Arms, low-key, actually very good. Do you get healed if you pop? That's a really good question. I have my level 1 judge certificate, so I should be able to remember this. When you attack or defend, so the defense step would come before the pop, I think, because it would check. Yeah, so basically what's going to happen if you defend with this card, it's going to generate 2 triggered effects. One of them is going to be the heal, and the other one is going to be Phantasm. And as the active player, you can choose which order you resolve them in, but they do both have to resolve. So even if you pop a card, because this says on defense, it will generate both the Phantasm and the heal trigger, and they'll both resolve. So yeah, you will get healed even if you pop something. Brothers in Arms, it's a defense reaction. It costs 1. It's a 1 for 4 defense reaction. That's perfectly fine. And remember as well, it's a 1 for 4 defense reaction in blue too. So, like, that's really good resource value. It's a popper in red, so well worth taking. And in blue, it's a 1 for 4 block, which is also a great resource. I'm not a fan of Critical Strike. It doesn't have go again. It's an alright finisher if you're low on cards. It does block 3 if you're low on resources. I'm not a fan. Scar for Scar has always been amazing. Like, the red one is basically a must pick. Even if you're playing Icelander or Dromai, I've put the red one in my deck with 0 regrets. But all the colors have their uses. Trade-in, I'm not really such a fan of. Healing Balm is amazing, especially in red or yellow. The blue is obviously just resources. But the important thing to understand about Healing Balm is that both Fire and Dromai have long combat chains that need a finisher, right? And if you have Rupture, great. But if you gain 3 life, that's also great. So don't worry about playing the fact that Healing Balm doesn't have go again. do your 3 fire attacks with Phoenix Flames and weapons and stuff, and then play Healing Balm and gain 3 life, and just laugh at the fact that you've just gained like 3 attacks and 3 life off your opponent. Same with Sigil of Protection. If you've got a spare mana resource at the end of the chain just to play Ward 4, you're laughing. Like, you're genuinely laughing, right? So these cards, don't underrate them. Like, Healing Balm in this set is not the same as Rejuvenate in the last set, because in this set, both of the classes have a lot of go again, and they don't have a finisher weapon like Rosetta Thorn that basically needs to be played at the end of the chain. So you actually get a lot more efficiency out of a Healing Balm than you did with something like a Rejuvenate in Tales of Aria. Because obviously Briar doesn't want to end with Rejuvenate. She wants to end with Rosetta Thorn. You know, Oldhim can't play it. Lexi wants to play more arrows. But in this set, actually finishing with a Healing Balm at the end of a long combat chain or a Sigil of Protection are both really, really strong. The last thing to note, Oasis Respite, amazing card. Take it in almost any color. The blue obviously is not the best. It can be a 1 block 5 if you're on low life. It can block a load of Arcane from Icelander, so it's super flexible. This is probably one of the best draft cards in the set. And if you're looking at your first pack and you're thinking, I have no idea what hero I want to play, I just want to draft what comes to me, you know, the generics like Oasis Respite, maybe not Red Healing Balm, but Red Healing, you know, it's an option. Scar for Scar Red, you know, these are good choices. You know, any equipment with Arcane Barrier, any like Oasis Respite or Scar for Scar, these are good pack 1 pick ones, right? They keep you open, they give you a lot of options. Fyendel's Fighting Spirit is a great pack 1 pick one. Even Flex Red is a great pack 1 pick one. Quelling Robes, I don't know if I would pick them turn pack 1, but you know, the generics are actually very, very good, especially considering there's not that many of them. It's actually really interesting how strong they are. Anyway, that is the limited set review. It goes quite quickly, I find, in the end when you get into it. You know, but I find it quite fascinating. So I really hope, you know, you have fun at this pre-release. It should be fun. I personally think this is actually a really great limited set, though I've seen some people who disagree. So we'll kind of see how it bears out once you know, I get to play a bit more of it. And, you know, just have fun. I mean, have fun for me, because the UK can't have any pre-releases this weekend because our product got held up in customs. So, you know, I need you guys to go out there and tell me about all your great pulls and all that stuff, and tell me how much of a great set you think it is. And you can give me that feedback on my Discord. I'll post a link to it at some point. I think I'll just post it now, actually. And, you know, if you want to come and join and have a bit of a chat, I am in there. It is the best place to find me. And, of course, join in with my community discussions and ask me questions. And I do play games there every couple of weeks when I've got the time. As you can imagine, I have a lot on, but I do like to sit in there and play games. And obviously, a lot of what I put into this guide came from, you know, my Patreon, where there is a much more detailed sort of written guide, which you can kind of see on the screen now. I will be doing a lot more of this stuff as the time goes by. Just, you know, when I go to an event, when I have good thoughts on things, I'm starting to build out my Patreon content. You can also find stuff like the Cyborg guide for the Prism deck that I took to the ProQuest. You can find funnier videos, like there's one video that I recorded after the Pro Tour from my hotel room, and this is actually, because I joked that it was Steelfur Sleeps because you could hear my roommate snoring behind me, but actually this is kind of like the real Steelfur Sleeps, because the day after I got back from the Pro Tour, I was trying to record like a post-Pro Tour video, and I was so tired I actually fell asleep while I was recording the video. So, you know, my Patrons can actually see me with my eyes basically drooping as I talk my way through 30 minutes of slow falling asleep until the last 5 minutes of the video, where I literally can't form sentences and I literally fall asleep for about 10 minutes. So it's actually quite fun. So that's the sort of stuff I've been putting on my Patreon, which I just wanted to share with you guys, because I am trying to sort of, you know, build it up. And of course, we are doing that Patreon giveaway at the moment. Anyone who is subscribed to my Patreon at the end of the month will be getting Heralds of Rebirth. Depending on the level that you subscribe to, you'll get 1, 2, or 3. And of course, if I have, we'll say, enough to give away, I will be more than generous to people and give them more than they were supposed to get or whatever. Anyway, this is the end of this live stream. I hope you found it interesting. I'm planning on probably doing a live stream schedule. I just need to pick a day that works for me and for viewers and stuff. I know I have a lot of American viewers who probably aren't going to be up in time to watch me doing live recordings, but I kind of like the idea of doing live recordings maybe on a Monday night or a Tuesday night, one of the nights that I'm not really that busy, and just sort of recording my videos live, having a bit of a chat with people, and maybe playing some games. I'm ready to get into playing more games on stream, just because I know that that's content that people want, and I'm also quite good at this game. You may not know this because you haven't seen me play in person, but you know, I do win every now and then, and I think it is worth just showing that off a little bit so you guys know that it's worth taking my advice sometimes. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening. I hope you've had a really enjoyable time. I hope this really helps with your pre-release experience. I know some people like to go in blind, but I personally feel like having an idea of... I find, I don't know, you guys can tell me if you agree or not, I genuinely find sealed pools kind of stressful. Like, what's actually my good list in this pool? What are actually the good cards? I genuinely find that kind of stressful. I find drafts a lot more calm because you can curate your experience a bit, and if it goes badly, it's kind of up to you. But when you're just sitting there with that sealed pool for the first time, and you're like, I have some good Icelander. This happened to me at the World Premiere event. I had good Icelander cards. I had good Dromai cards. I had some good Phi cards. And I picked Icelander, and I was just sitting there thinking the entire tournament, what if I had picked Dromai? And I ended up switching to Dromai for the last 2 games and winning them. So I was like, damn it, maybe I should have just played Dromai the entire time. So, you know, I don't know. I get a bit stressed by sealed just because it's much harder for me to figure out what the best deck is. Where in draft, I'm confident enough reading signals that I can just be like, okay, I'm confident that I picked the right hero. We're just gonna play Phi. It's gonna be great. You know, to the extent that in the massive draft, I drafted my seat perfectly, having never seen the set before. I drafted my seat perfectly, and what I mean by that is I knew that the person to my right wasn't drafting. This is the last story, and then I'll actually let you go. I'm sorry you find draft stressful. I mean, I think it is just a reps thing, and you need to get a lot of reps with draft and the set to really get clear on what a signal is and when your opponent is, or when the person sitting next to you is telling you something, right? So I'm drafting Dromai, right, in my seat, and I know the person to my right is drafting not Dromai because they passed me a rare dragon. They passed me a Chromai in pack 1, pick 2. So I was like, they're not drafting Dromai, or they would have taken that dragon because it's really good. And then I'm like, what do I think they're drafting? And then pack 3 comes along and it's missing both a Phi card and an Icelander card. I'm like, okay, cool. To my right, I have a Phi and an Icelander, at least for now. I'm starting to draft Dromai. And I'm rewarded by choosing that because the next 4 cards I draft, and I know I shouldn't commit heavy to a hero on like pack 1, pick 1, but I drafted a rare dragon as my pack 1 because I got Themai, which is a really good dragon. So I was like, let's just keep that. And if I go Icelander, I won't want my opponent having it because it turns off actions on your turn. And if I go Dromai, then I really want it. And then the next pick, I got another rare dragon. I think I got a Vinskeri, and I was like, okay, cool. Dromai is wide open. And then I got, in this order, let's go back to the Dromai page, actually, so I can illustrate exactly what I got. Because this is how I knew I should be playing Dromai. I got a red Billowing Mirage. I got a red Rake the Embers. I got a red Sand Cover and a red Skittering Sands. So then I'm sitting there looking at my first 7 picks of this draft. And I have red Skittering Sands, red Sand Cover, red Rake the Embers, red Billowing Mirage, right? Pretty heavy on reds. And I have 2 rare dragons. I have a Vinskeri, and I think it was either a Chromai or a Themai. And I'm just sitting there being like, no one to my right is drafting Dromai, at least for 2 or 3 seats. So I'm wholly confident. And here's the important bit about the draft strategy. In my first pack, I had to choose. I could take a rare dragon, or I could take an Ice Eternal. And I ended up passing the Ice Eternal because I wanted to see if I could draft Dromai, and I think Themai was the good dragon, so I just took it because I was like, this is really good. And immediately I had the feeling that because I just passed Ice Eternal to the person to my left, they just went straight into Icelander, because that's such a bomb card for her, that I got a bomb, and by passing a bomb to my opponent, I made sure he was drafting Icelander, and then by taking all of the really good Dromai cards straight away, I pushed the person next to him into Fi. So then I'm drafting basically Icelander Fi to my right, which I know because of the passes of these really good Dromai cards early on, and I'm drafting Icelander Fi to my left. Now, I wish I could say the draft was balanced that way the entire way, and it went like Dromai, Fi, Icelander, but actually it didn't. We got 1 Fi, we got 4 Dromai, and 3 Icelander. Because everyone was so scared that everyone was going to force Fi because the world premiere was so full of Fi that no one drafted him, even when he was obviously open at, like, we were on pack 1, pick 13, and we had rare Fi cards. Let me bring them up. Right. Pack 1, pick 12, we have, that's the next page, we had Engulfing Flame Wave and Mounting Anger going around in 2 different packs. And we had Arise from the Ashes, yellow and red. Going around on pack 1, pick 12. We had those rares going around. And I just kept passing them because I was like, I am in the right class for my seat. I know I am. I'm just going to keep drafting Dromai and it's going to be fine. And it was fine. I 100% had the best Dromai deck at that table. The other 3 Dromai players, maybe bar 1, there was one who was like just after Icelander and Fi to the left. He was all right. The other 2 Dromai players actually were terrible because one of them was drafting to the right of that other guy, so had a Dromai to his right, not great, and the other one was drafting, there was basically when it went Dromai, Icelander, Dromai, right? So that last Dromai genuinely screwed for cards, right? And that last Dromai is exactly the one that should have pivoted to Fi, because right next to him was a Fi. So if he had pivoted to Fi, he suddenly would have been upstream of the only other Fi at the table, and he would have been taking all of these amazing picks. So that's kind of just like a breakdown of what happened and what went wrong with my draft, but it was more like a bad reading of the situation. I feel like if there had been better drafters at the table, someone else, because I was never going to pivot because I was getting hot fire for Dromai, but one of the other Dromai players would have pivoted, because remember in Fab you can burn 10 cards from the first pack if you need to. It's quite a resilient format. If you get a couple good generics and you get like 6 class cards, it is perfectly acceptable to just chuck those class cards away and go, and just go full, and just go full onto a new class, because you'll get 30 cards from the next packs because no one is taking them. And if no one is taking Rise Above, Rise from the Ashes, and Engulfing Flame Wave and Mounting Anger, Brand with Cinderclaw Red, Fi is so open, you could draft an amazing deck. And I was starting to say, is no one at this table drafting Fi at all? If no one at your table takes Fi, you take Fi and you get free wins from literally everyone. That's it. At my Monarch draft, I was the only Prism. That's disgusting. You must have cleaned up. Prism was actually really, really good in Monarch draft. You just like hit with 1 or 2 shields. Hit with 1 or 2 attacks, made a shield, and then just blocked it. Pitched to blue, came in for 4, and then just fatigued and killed people because they just couldn't handle the constant pressure. Prism was really good. I loved Monarch draft, to be honest. I liked Monarch draft a lot more than Tales of Aria, but I've done videos and videos about what was wrong with Tales of Aria draft. I will say that from my first 2 drafts, Uprising feels a lot easier to read signals in terms of what Draconic cards are good with what heroes. I do worry, and I always kind of have this worry in Flesh and Blood, that there's not really enough depth in strategy to, like, allow... it feels like 2 people that are drafting Fi are kind of trying to draft the same deck, if that makes sense. So I don't really know what the pivot is that lets 2 people draft Fi and just not be competing for the same cards, if that makes sense. Whereas in other draft games, there'd be like multiple strategies within specific colors. And because you can splash... So Magic is the good example. Often in a Magic set, red, like white and green will have 2 different splits. There'll be a green-white and there'll be a green-red deck. And there'll be a white-black deck as well. And there'll be a split of cards that go into either of them. So I can be drafting white, but not necessarily be competing for the same white cards that you're drafting. There's not really that depth to this set, which kind of, I don't know how they build it into Flesh and Blood, because there wasn't really that depth in WTR or Arc either. There was that depth in Tales, but it only worked in Tails because of the essence system. And I don't know that the essence system was worth. I don't know if we got enough from it to justify what it like cost us in terms of confusion for new players and things like that. So that's a bit tricky. Oh, you died to Levier in round 1. That is so sad. I had actually. It reminded me. I had the exact same experience in reverse. I was doing a top 8 draft of Monarch. I was the only Levier drafter. I had a free reign on Levier cards, and I lost to a Prism because, and this is ridiculous, the one time I didn't draw a 6-power card in my hand, right? The one time I didn't draw a 6-power card in my hand, I bricked on non-attack actions and stuff. They came in with an Erudition, and I didn't have any armor to block it, right? So I just got absolutely smacked by this Prism, who had no business beating me because I had 20 6-power cards in my deck and like 10 blues that weren't. And I drew all the 10 blues at the same time and then just got eruditioned in the face. It was actually disgusting. Anyway, I'm going to leave that now because that's an hour and I think my friends want to play some games. I am planning, let me know sort of formats that people want. Because I can do like once a week just sitting around playing some games. I do need to do some more games. And I know a lot of people enjoy watching them. But, if there's anything else you think you'd like I can do a weekly news update. If people don't have time to follow the news, I can give you a 10-minute news update every Tuesday or something. Or something like that. I don't know. I have a little bit of time to get a bit creative with my channel. I'm working with someone else on as I said at the start of the stream, on a redo of my new player hero overview, which is like 2 minutes on every single hero in the game. And we're going to do it, and we're going to make it really, really nice, because for some reason, new players keep finding it. Maybe it's keyworded really well, but it's getting 600 views a month. So I really want to make sure that like that original view of Flesh and Blood heroes that people are going to that video for is like really polished. So that when they see it for the first time, they think, wow, this is a content creator, me personally, who really cares about the game. So I get their subscription straight away, right? But also like, wow, this is a community that really cares about the game to make this sort of really, glossy video that goes through all the heroes. So I'm doing some work with Kugane, because I'm not good with video editing myself, to make this really nice new player hero guide for that. And yeah, I will do more gameplay. I just need to find people to play with. Because we're doing all this testing, but people don't want me to record the testing games, because if I do, it's like, well, you're showing off our testing to everyone. I'm like, well, everyone's testing the same Dromai decks anyway. Yeah, I love Kugane. He's such a nice guy. The next video that's coming out, which I'll be recording tomorrow, is I'm going to be doing a live sort of deck building. All my pre-releases have got cancelled, so I have to have stuff to do, Flesh and Blood related, or I'm going to get like twitchy. And my girlfriend is away, so I'm going to get super twitchy because I'll just have nothing to do and no, I want company to do stuff. So I'm going to be doing a live first glance deck building for the 3 new heroes. I already have a draft of 5 that I want to run people through, but I'm going to also build decks live for Icelander and Dromai and just see what I come up with on the fly. And I think that'll be really interesting. So I'll look forward to posting that up for you guys over the weekend. But in the meantime, I'm going to say goodnight because it's coming up to 10 o'clock and I want to kind of start to wind down. But I hope you enjoyed this video. And, wherever you are, if you have pre-releases to go to, have a great time. If you pull anything sick, please do just let me know. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think you're having a fantastic time. It's actually a really, really good set. And I can't wait to see the next set, Dynasty, when it comes out later on this year, and find out exactly what happens to, Fi and Dromai, and who actually becomes the new Emperor and all that other stuff that I imagine they're going to give to us. But I put a video out about that like half an hour before I did this video. So, if you want to learn my speculations on Dynasty, you can just hop over to that and figure out what I think might actually be going on there. All right, have a great evening or day. I'll talk to you all soon.